How's everybody doing? Can everybody please give a big round of applause to Dondre Young? Fantastic young man. Thank you for the introduction. Happy Halloween, everybody. I love your masks. Please give a big round of applause as well to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, your own. Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist. My buddy from the Senate, Debbie Stabenow. A man who's always in there fighting for you, who we need to send back to the United States Senate, Gary Peters. Your congressman, born and raised right here in Flint, Michigan, Dan Kildee. Mayor Sheldon Neely. And the big treat to come, the next president of the United States, Joe Biden. Three days, Flint. 3 days until the most important election of our lifetimes. I love you too. Listen, I know right now you got the Michigan State game, and that's a big deal. Paul Bunyan Trophy's on the line. But this Tuesday, everything is on the line. Our jobs are on the line. Our health care is on the line. Whether or not we get this pandemic under control is on the line. But here's the good news. On Tuesday, you can choose change. On Tuesday, you can elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You can choose a better America. And what's even better news is you don't have to wait until Tuesday to cast your ballot, Michigan. You can vote in person right now. Just go to iwillvote.com. Find your polling place. Get out there and vote. And if somebody like you already voted, go help your friends and family make a plan to vote. Because we need everybody, not just some people. We got to get everybody out there. I love you too. Okay, that's it. Put that mask back on. Listen, Michigan, Joe Biden is my brother. I love this. I love Joe Biden, and he will be a great president. Now, I'll admit, 12 years ago, when I asked him to be the nominee for vice president with me when I was running, I didn't know Joe that well. We had served together in the Senate. Living by the words his mom taught him. No one's better than you, Joe, but you're no better than anybody else. And that sense of decency and empathy, the belief in hard work and family and faith, the belief that everybody counts, that's who Joe is. And that's who he'll be as president. I can tell you that the presidency doesn't change who you are, it shows who you are. It reveals who you are. And for 8 years, Joe was the last one in the room whenever I faced a big decision. And he made me a better president. He's got the character and the experience to make us a better country. And he and Kamala are going to be in the fight, not for themselves, but for every single one of us. And we sure can't say that about the president we've got right now. You know, I've said this before, I never thought Donald Trump would embrace my vision. I understood he didn't agree with my policies, but I did hope, for the country's sake, that he might show some interest in the job. He might take the job seriously. He never has. He hasn't shown any interest in doing the work or helping anybody but himself and his friends, or treating the presidency as anything more than a reality show to give him the attention that he craves. But unfortunately, the rest of us have to live with the consequences. Almost 230,000 Americans are dead. More than 100,000 small businesses have closed. Almost 300,000 jobs are gone in Michigan alone. America just had its single worst week of new COVID cases. And what's his closing argument? Here we are, the worst week, this week. I mean, we've been going through this now for months. The federal government has had an opportunity to respond for months. And his closing argument this week is that the press and people are too focused on COVID. COVID, he's complaining. He's jealous of COVID's media coverage. And now he's accusing doctors of profiting off this pandemic. Think about that. He said this just yesterday. Said doctors are overblowing it because they're going to make money off it. Doctors. He cannot fathom. He does not understand the notion that somebody would risk their life to save others without trying to make a buck. His chief of staff says, we're not going to control the pandemic. That's a quote. Said it last week. We are not going to control the pandemic. We noticed, Mr. Chief of Staff. We understand you're not going to control the pandemic. But you know who will? Joe Biden will. When we elect him President of the United States. You remember when Republicans were saying, let Detroit go bankrupt? You remember that? Now they might as well be saying, let America get COVID, because that's how they're asking. If Trump were focused on COVID from the beginning, cases wouldn't be reaching new record highs across the country. Some of the places he holds rallies have even seen new spikes after he leaves town. There was just a study by Stanford University that just came out showing thousands of people are likely to have gotten sick because of these rallies he's holding. What is his obsession, by the way, with crowd size? You notice that? He's always worried. This is the one measure he has of success. He's still worrying about his inauguration crowd being smaller than mine. It really bugs him. He's still talking about that. Does he have nothing better to worry about? Did no one come to his birthday party when he was a kid? Was he traumatized? What's with crowds? Well, you know, I've had crowds before, you know. Had quite a few. But you know, when a country's going through a pandemic, that's not what you're supposed to be worrying about. And that's the difference between Joe Biden and Trump right there. Trump cares about feeding his ego. Joe cares about keeping you and your family safe. And he's less interested in feeding his ego with having big crowds than he is making sure he's not going around making more and more people sick. That's what you should expect from a president. You can expect something different from a reality TV star, but from a president, you want them to put you above their own ego. Look, here's the truth, Michigan. This pandemic would have been challenging for any president. But this idea that somehow this White House has done anything but completely screw this up is nonsense. Canada identified its first case the same week that the U.S. did, right? Just a few miles up, right? It's not close. I may not be pointing north, but Canada's pretty close by. Our mortality rate in the United States is 2.5 times higher than Canada. Think about that. If we had the same percentage of folks dying in Canada as we do here, nearly 90,000 Americans would have died instead of 230,000 Americans. If we had handled this pandemic like Canada did, 140,000 of our fellow Americans might still be alive today. Think about that. Think about that. And yet, despite that, last week, when Trump was asked if he'd do anything different, he said, not much. Really? Not much. Can't think of anything. Listen, I understand the president was anxious to downplay it because he wanted to get credit for the economy that he inherited, and zero blame for the pandemic he ignored. But it doesn't work that way. The job doesn't work that way. Tweeting at the TV doesn't fix things. Making stuff up doesn't make people's lives better. You've got to have a plan. You've got to put in the work. And along with the experience to get things done, Joe Biden has concrete plans and policies that will turn our vision of a better, fairer, stronger country into reality. Joe's not going to screw up testing. Joe's not going to call scientists idiots. He's not going to host super spreader events around the country. What Joe will do is get this pandemic under control with a plan to make testing free and widely available, to get a vaccine to every American cost-free, and make sure our frontline heroes never have to ask other countries for the equipment that they need. That's what Joe Biden will do. Joe's plan will guarantee paid sick leave for workers and parents affected by the pandemic. He'll make sure that small businesses in every community, not just some, not just big corporations, but small businesses that hold our communities together and employ millions of Americans, can reopen safely. Donald Trump likes to claim he built this economy. America created 1.5 million more jobs in the last 3 years of the Obama-Biden administration than in his first 3 years. And that was before he could blame the pandemic. Joe Biden and I, with the help of a Democratic Congress, rescued the auto industry. Gary Peters was there. He told us to bet on Michigan, and we did. And manufacturing in Michigan grew by 15% over our last 4 years. Trump promised he'd make Michigan the manufacturing hub of the world again. It's up 1% under his first 4 years. 15% under Obama-Biden, 1% under him. That's Michigan, right here. We handed him the longest streak of job growth in American history. But the economic damage he inflicted by botching the pandemic response means he'll be the only president since Herbert Hoover to actually lose jobs. Herbert Hoover. That's a long time ago. Joe Biden and Gary Peters know that the key to a strong economy isn't cutting more taxes for billionaires. It's lifting up the prospects for working Americans. And Joe's got a plan to create 1 million new auto-related jobs by accelerating electric vehicle production. He's got a plan to create 10 million good, clean energy jobs and fight climate change and secure environmental justice, something that's relevant to Flint, Michigan. You know something about that. He'll pay for his plans by rolling back Trump's tax cuts for billionaires. And this is important. Joe sees this moment not to get back to where we were, but to build on the progress we made together and finally make long overdue changes so that our economy actually makes life a little easier for everybody. For the waitress trying to raise a kid on her own. For the student figuring out how to pay for next semester's classes. or the shift worker always on the edge of getting laid off, or the cancer survivor who's worried that her pre-existing conditions, protections will be taken away. Let's talk about health care for a second. Let's talk about health care for a second. Republicans love to say right before an election that they'll protect your pre-existing conditions. That's what they say. Well, you know what? Joe and I actually protected them 10 years ago with the Affordable Care Act. And since we did so, with no help from Republicans, no votes from Republicans, Republicans have tried to repeal or undermine the ACA more than 60 times. For 60 times they've tried to take people's health care away. And when asked, why are you doing that? Why are you being so mean? You don't think these people should have health care? They say, no. We've got a new plan. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be terrific. Except it's been 10 years now and they still don't have a plan. They're trying to bamboozle you. Instead of actually coming up with a plan, they've attacked the ACA at every turn. They've driven up costs. They've driven up the number of uninsured. Now they're trying to get the Supreme Court to take your health care away in the middle of a pandemic. Right at the time when people need health care. They've signed on to a case right now in the Supreme Court where they're trying to take insurance away from folks who need it with nothing but empty promises to take its place. And now Mitch McConnell is pouring millions of outside super PAC dollars into Michigan to try to beat Gary Peters because that's part of their agenda. Michigan, here is the truth. Joe and Kamala and Gary will protect your health care. They will expand Medicare. They will make insurance more affordable for everybody. And the reason you know that's true is because they were there when we did it the first time. And here's another thing. With Joe and Kamala at the helm, this is a big benefit. Michelle and I were talking about this over dinner the other day. You're not going to have to think about them every day. You're not going to have to argue with your family about them every day. It won't be so exhausting. You'll be able to get on with your lives knowing that the president is not going to suggest we inject bleach as a possible cure of COVID. You won't have to find out, you won't wake up in the morning and kind of open your phone, oh, newsflash. The president retweeted conspiracy theories that the Navy SEALs didn't actually kill bin Laden. You're not going to have a president who goes out of his way to insult people just because they don't support him. This is not normal behavior, people. We would not tolerate it from a teacher or a coach or a coworker or a family member. If a neighbor was acting like this, you'd stay away from that neighbor. Why would we accept it from the President of the United States? And you know what? There are consequences to this action. There are consequences to his actions. It's not just a joke. It's not funny. Those actions embolden other people to be mean and divisive and racist. And it frays at the fabric of all of our lives, and it affects how our children see the world and how they treat each other. It affects the way our families get along. It affects the way the world sees America. That's why Joe talks about the soul of America. That's why he talks about decency and kindness and responsibility and hard work. That, more than anything, is what separates Joe Biden from his opponent. He actually cares about every American. He does not have a mean-spirited bone in his body. I have seen him spend time with people, strangers that he doesn't know. When he hears about they're going through a hardship, he talks about what he's gone through.
When he sees a kid, his eyes light up because he thinks about his own kids and grandkids. Joe Biden tries to live the values we cherish: honesty, hard work, kindness, humility, responsibility, helping somebody else out. That used to be the definition of manliness, not strutting and showing off, acting important, bullying people. Used to be being a man meant taking care of your other people. Not going around bragging, but just doing the work. Not looking for credit. Trying to live right. Passing on those values to your kids. Looking out for a community. Carrying your weight. Giving up a little bit of what you might have to help somebody who has a real need. When you elect Joe, that's what you'll see reflected from the White House. And those shouldn't be Republican or Democratic values. They didn't used to be. They're what we grew up learning from our parents and from our grandparents. And they're the values we still try to teach our kids. And they're not white or black or Hispanic or Asian or Native American values. They're American values. And we've got to reclaim them right now. But to reclaim them, we're going to have to turn out like never before. If we're going to reclaim those values, we need to leave no doubt. We can't afford to be complacent. Not this time. Not in this election. We got a little complacent the last election. And listen, I understand why Americans get frustrated and sometimes think government's not going to make a difference, voting's not going to make a difference. I understand that. Government's not perfect. The people in government are not perfect, even when it's working. Government's not going to solve every problem. But we can make things better. A president can't by himself solve every challenge facing the economy here in Flint or Michigan, but if we elect people like Gary Peters and Dan Kildee, and we get a House and a Senate joined with a White House that are more focused on working people and getting you the help that you need, they will make a difference. And some folks will get jobs that wouldn't otherwise have jobs. And some folks will have health care that wouldn't otherwise have health care. A president by himself can't eliminate all racial bias in our criminal justice system. But if we elect district attorneys and state's attorneys and sheriffs focused on equality and justice, and we once again have a Justice Department and a Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department that cares about these issues, we can make things better. And that's what voting's about. Not making things perfect, but making things better. It puts us on a track so that generations from now we can look back and say, you know what? Right about then, things start getting better again. The fact that you don't get 100% of what you want right away, that's not a good reason to vote. You just got to keep at it. You know, typically just over 50% of us vote who are eligible. Think about that. Almost half of the people in most elections who are eligible to vote don't vote. Imagine if 60% of us voted. Imagine if 70% of us voted. Imagine January 20th, when we swear in a president and vice president who's got a plan to get us out of this mess, who care about folks like you, who've been in your shoes, who know what it's like to struggle, who know what it's like to have to work hard, who are thinking about working Americans and have a plan to help you start getting ahead. Imagine what it's going to be like to have a president and a vice president who believe in science and who have a plan to protect this planet for our children and who believe in racial equality and are sending a clear signal that we're all in this together and are doing the work to bring us closer so that we have an America where no matter what we look like, where we come from, who we love, or how much money we've got, we can make it. And we have a place, and we're treated with dignity and respect. Michigan, that's what's possible. And I'm asking you to remember that it's possible. I want you to remember what this country can be. But you can't just imagine a better future. You can't just wish for it. You've got to fight for it. You got to fight for it. We got to out-hustle the other side. We got to vote up and down the ticket like never before, right here in Michigan and all across the country. We've got to leave no doubt about who we are and what this country stands for. And if we do, we will send Gary Peters back to the Senate. And we will elect a man who loves this country and who cares about you and who will fight for every single one of us and will look out not just for folks who support him, but even the folks who don't. My friend, the next president of the United States of America, Joe Biden.